Okay, now it should work. Okay, so welcome to the Swiss Space Museum online space chat. I will share for a second my screen. And so, oops, wrong slide. Okay, so I'm extremely pleased to welcome you all to this online space chat of the Swiss Space Museum. And I would especially like to welcome Christopher Wanjek from the United States. We are really pleased to have you here today for this space chat. Christopher Wanjek is an author and freelance health and science writer based near Washington, D.C. His expertise is in health, nutrition, medicine, environmental science, physics, and astronomy. Christopher holds a master's degree in environmental health science from Harvard School of Public Health and a degree in journalism of Temple University. Christopher is the author of 3 books. The first one was Bad Medicine, the second one Food at Work, which we all now know from the coronavirus lockdowns. And the newest one, which was published last year, is Spacefarers, How We Will Settle the Moon, Mars, and Beyond. And this is the book we will talk later now. He also has written more than 500 newspaper, magazine, and web articles for periodicals such as the Washington Post and Smithsonian Magazine. He is a columnist for Life Science and for Mercury Magazine. And also from 1997 until 2014, he was a contributing joke writer for The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. Christopher Wanjek's work has been translated into nearly a dozen languages. Welcome, Christopher Wanjek. So just for you all here who are here, please unmute yourself if you're not already unmuted. If you have questions, we have at the end of the talk, we will have question and answer time. And if you want to react on something, just do it here. And the book we talk today is Spacefarers. We have a raffle, so you can win one of these 3 books. But now I share the screen so we can see Christopher. Hello, Christopher.
Hello, Guido. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hey, how's my sound? Because, I mean, it is unprecedentedly hot right now. It's 25 degrees Celsius outside, and my room is suddenly very warm. So I opened a window. I don't know if it's too noisy.
No, it's great.
Okay, good.
So, Christopher, please share your screen and give us an input about your book.
Okay, that's great. This will be just a little introduction for our talk, just to set the tone. Okay, coming along.
Yep.
Okay, so when I talk, I opened up with Mount Everest. It could be the Matterhorn in Switzerland. And the reason why I do this is because we're able to get to the top of Mount Everest with relative ease now. You know, some 4,000 people have done so. Only 400 people have been to space, but about 4,000 people have been to the top of Everest. But, you know, despite how easy it is to get to the top now, and despite this gorgeous view from the top, no one is living up there. And that sounds obvious. I mean, what are you going to do for a living? You know, how are you going to raise your kids up there? Doesn't make much sense to live on the top of Mount Everest. But we have to start thinking about that when we want to live on the moon, live on Mars. What would be the motivations behind this? And that's what my book is really about. I mean, I do explain the possibilities of going out there, but when I think of my family in the United States, 2 generations ago, my grandparents, coincidentally, on my father's side, came from the German-speaking area of the Czech Republic through Austria, and they came for economic reasons to the United States. They didn't come just because someone invented a boat. And likewise, our migration into space has to be more than someone merely inventing a rocket to get us there. Now, that said, I do think we will absolutely be on the moon in something that's looking like this in maybe 15 years, scientific basis. It's going to be a lot like Antarctica, almost exactly like Antarctica, with nation-led bases that scientists and engineers come and go for a few months at a time. And maybe you'll have a year-round crew, just like on Antarctica, but no one lives on Antarctica. And there's a reason for that. It's not pleasant. It's beautiful, but it's not practical to actually live there. Okay, and I do think we're going to get to Mars, maybe 20, 25 years, something very basic. And there's a potential to live there, but it's not just a matter of overcoming challenges. There's really this overarching question of the gravity. It's 38% Earth's gravity. And we just kind of gloss over the ease of living on Mars, and when we talk about colonizing a place, in my mind, that means being able to raise children. And if you can't raise children on Mars in 38% gravity, that's it. It's the end of the game. It could be a retirement community. It could be a scientific outpost. It will be a scientific outpost. But could we actually live there? I think there are emotional incentives to go there, but could our biology support it? This is how we're going to get there, by driving. I joke, of course, and so this is a real photograph. That's what's amazing. This, you might know, is a Tesla automobile launched by SpaceX to prove the capacity of their Falcon Heavy rocket. This vehicle is circling Mars as we speak, an incredible feat. But I love this image because it's symbolic, I think, of how companies like SpaceX are the driving force of space exploration these days. And my last point, again, it gets to this idea of why would we ever want to leave the Earth? And the arguments, and I don't think they're good arguments to convince other people. We talk about overpopulation, asteroid strike, global warming, nuclear war. We say we have to be a multi-planet species in order to survive. Even physicist Stephen Hawking said we only have 100 years to get off Earth or go extinct. And I think that's just a ludicrous idea, because honestly, nothing can happen to the Earth that would make it less habitable than Mars. I mean, even with an asteroid strike or nuclear war, it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? Hundreds of thousands of people will survive underground. It wouldn't mean extinction. We're smarter than the dinosaurs. 99.99% of the population will be wiped out. Civilization will be set back, but we will not go extinct. But here's the illogic of this argument. If we were on Mars in some self-sufficient way, if we had that kind of technology not to need the Earth anymore, then we would have the technology to detect and deflect an asteroid before it even hit the Earth. And likewise with climate change, if we could manage living on Mars in such a hostile climate, we would be able to live on Earth in whatever hostile climate we are creating. If we could terraform Mars, we would terraform Earth back into what Earth was supposed to be like. So this idea that we have to escape, I think, is the wrong idea. And people say, what a waste of money, and there's so much misery down here. Well, yeah, that's true. And that's what space is all about, infinite resources. This is what we can tap into. And that's what I try to argue in the book as well. I mean, we could be putting solar panels in space where it's never a cloudy day. We could do fission on the moon. We could put supercomputing in space where it's much more efficient at 40 Kelvin. We can do all types of profitable and beneficial things for humanity. We already started that with communication satellites and weather satellites. That's improving life on Earth. And that's the direction we need to go. And then we can talk about living on Mars and the moon, and but I think it's going to be for fun and the pure adventure and of exploration. But I don't think it's going to be a necessity for the human race to do such a thing. And so practically speaking, it's going to be baby stepping into space. And, you may have seen recent news about this grand space hotel. That's like 3 generations away. The first thing that's going to happen is something like these inflatable habitats that can be built for a couple $1 million and launched. This is Robert Bigelow down here. He's doing it. He got set back because of the pandemic, unfortunately. He had to lay off his workforce. But, when they come back online, we may be seeing this decade of this would be the new kind of space factory in microgravity, even space hotels. That's his plan, to rent this out for $60 million a month. And that includes the price of the rocket, obviously pretty pricey, but a fraction of the cost that it took to build the International Space Station. And there's more livable volume in these things than all of the ISS. And again, I spoke about the moon. It's going to be a lot like Antarctica, if you want to talk about that. And incredibly coincidental, we're going to go to the South Pole of the moon. It's the most practical place to go to at first. And then, we can talk about the problems with Mars. The biggest problem with Mars is it's so beautiful, right? It looks like Arizona in the United States. And, we can manage that. We can live in Arizona. We can live on Mars. But, we kind of gloss over these issues. There's the gravity, of course, but even these pressure suits that you see this person wearing over here. Can you really get by on such a skimpy pressure suit? There's only 6 millibars of air pressure. And that's marginally better than the moon. You're going to be in some big bulky moon suit unless we learn how to compensate for that. And that's no fun. It becomes less of a fun hike on the moon, on Mars, when you're in a big bulky suit. And likewise, you have all this idea of glass domes. Yes, the sun is strong enough. It's sort of like Scandinavia intensity. But there's the dust storm problem, isn't there? The dust storm, they come by, they block out the sun for weeks, sometimes months at a time. Solar panels fail. So if solar panels fail, you can assume that photosynthesis is going to fail. So how practical and probable is it to grow trees under glass? And who's going to go out there and clean it every day with all the dust? There's simple little things that people just gloss over, but they're major obstacles. And my last point is this beautiful scenario that SpaceX has put out there of thousands of people on Mars. Again, from an engineering standpoint, totally feasible. The biology, maybe, depending on the gravity. But what about the economics? What does this represent? This represents trillions of dollars of one-way investment. The people living on there are pretty lucky, but they're a bunch of moochers, we say. They're living off the Earth. What are they contributing back to the Earth? That's something we have to figure out what to do. This is not like old world, new world scenario where we bring back gold and timber and fur and fish. What can Mars offer humans to reward this investment of trillions of dollars in a one-way direction just for this human experiment? Who's going to fund this human experiment? Elon Musk has a few $1 billion, but not the trillions of dollars it would take to set this up. It's really something we have to start thinking about. Otherwise, it'll be a scientific outpost, which is great as well. And the problem with all these kind of ideas, these challenging worlds that we want to live on, Titan, the moon around Saturn, because it has an atmosphere, let's live there. It goes back to this idea by Isaac Asimov called terrestrial chauvinism. Again, about the technology. If we had the technology to live on Mars or even live beyond Mars in these self-enclosed habitats, we likely would have the simpler technology to live above the planet in these rotating artificial worlds with artificial gravity. I mean, look at this one. It has patio furniture, for Christ's sake. Wouldn't you rather want to live in this kind of comfort with artificial gravity than being in these hostile environments, which will be great to visit, great to experience, just like the top of Mount Everest. But what would be the comfortable, logical thing for humans to do? I think we will naturally be inclined to be living in rotating orbital habitats more so than the hostile planets below them. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much for this really great input. It was the way like when I read your book.
Okay.
I was shaken between what is possible and then the questions you pose.
Mhm.
And the funny thing is, I received just a few days ago this book. You might
Oh,
see it
yeah.
here. And it's an old one from the 1970s. With
I
all
have that, yeah. I
color
don't have it
leads.
here.
And it's really funny to see what was predicted in this time, what could happen. And to my first question, in all the chapters you write in your book,
Yes.
At the end, my prediction.
Yeah.
Oh, there are many books with the topic of future in space, especially from the 60s and 70s. And all these predictions came rather bad. It wasn't the thing they thought of. So your book, Spacefarers, also deals with the future of spaceflight. Aren't you afraid that you'll be totally off the mark with your predictions?
I thought you were going to start with the easy questions. I thought that's what we established. Okay. No, I was worried about that myself going into it. And I didn't have a formula, but I had some, I think this might be interesting, the way I kind of predicted the future. I was excited by the clear advancements from the entrepreneurial side in the past 10 years, primarily led by Elon Musk. There was also a company called Rocket Lab in New Zealand that's extraordinary. I mean, there's a major effort going out there now, more so than anything before, because there's business to business connections in space now. It's not just governments giving loads of money to military contractors. So that was an element of optimism. And then I thought, well, there's all, you know, it's harder than people think, and that's going to set things back a little bit. And so I tried to make these conservative estimates, you know, more or less what people are predicting and maybe add a decade or so. But then what sealed it for me, I think, is what China is doing. And I think you can, you know, love or hate China, but it's a very pragmatic country. It has this 4,000-year history, and it has everything planned out for the future. You know, they said, okay, you know, 50 years ago, we'll eventually get back Hong Kong, and we'll deal with it then. You know, they have everything so planned out so well. And so when they say they want to go to the moon by 2030, they're going to go to the moon by 2030, you know, and they got the type of government, again, love it or hate it, that can do those kind of things, unlike the US government that's changing administrations all the time. So yeah, and I feel that they're going to drive this somewhat of a competition to get things moving in the area of space. So that was informing my predictions.
The way you describe China now is when we look back in the 1960s, when President Kennedy said, hey, let's go to the moon. Was it a different country then?
Oh, yeah,
so
totally different. But they always had this long-term goal, even back then. They knew what they couldn't do in 10 years or 20 years, but they were looking 50, 100 years into the future. I don't think any country thinks 100 years into the future like China does.
Do you have any memories of the moon landings? You were quite young when Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon.
Yeah, I'm just a kid right now. I'm only 53. So I was 2 or 3 when that was going on. So I have no memories of it. In the 70s, I just remember things on TV. That's about it, though.
The trigger for the Apollo moon landings was President Kennedy. Was he a space geek, or why did he say?
Right, that fascinated me when I researched this. I really stumbled upon it, and I was a bit lucky, but around 2010, some recorded tapes from his audio tapes from his office were released. And he said, he doesn't, I think the exact words was, "I don't care about the moon." You know, and that's pretty eye-opening. He said that to James Webb, the head of NASA at the time. And so when I dug into it, it seems that the real hero was Lyndon B. Johnson, his vice president at the time. It was him who was really worried about godless Russia having a technological advantage over God-loving United States in a very patriotic terms. And so he persuaded Kennedy to do something major, because before this is around 1962, he made this announcement. But between Sputnik and 1962, Russia was just taking off, just one advance after another, launching people into space, launching a dog into space, then the people, and then, you know, landing things on the moon. We had to come up with some major focus to outdo that. So it was really a strategy devised by Lyndon B. Johnson. And it only succeeded after that assassination. Lyndon B. Johnson became president and stayed president. And that's the only reason why this happened, because the Barry Goldwater, the one who was running for president in 1964, he was totally going to get rid of this stupid moon plan, and we wouldn't be on the moon. It's just a fate. It's just luck.
So the Apollo moon landings were a great story, but afterwards everything stopped, and many people were disappointed that after Apollo nothing happened what was written in the books or what was predicted. So why did that happen?
I think a certain reality came to mind. A lot of people blame Richard Nixon, saying this was Kennedy's dream, not my legacy. But he had to be practical about this, because you might know the expense for the United States. The NASA budget by the mid-60s was 4% of the entire federal budget. And it was just a monster. It was a war effort. It's really what it was. It was war against Russia. So there was that kind of money going into this, and it just wasn't sustainable. And the taxpayers didn't really want to put up with it, because we said, we have a goal of getting to the moon. Okay, we're on the moon. We did it. We can move on to something else now. And so the majority of people didn't want to further this to happen. So it became an issue of politics. How much more can we support this? And what else can we do in space instead of spending a lot of money on the moon that doesn't seem to have any practical purpose to us?
And those were the missteps. You in your book, you write about the missteps that occurred after Apollo.
Yeah, I think NASA became incredibly bureaucratic when it became down to human space flight. I mean, NASA exceeded incredibly in the 70s as far as space science was concerned, because that was done the right way with the peer review process. Scientists at universities came up with scientific mission ideas. They debated, they competed for it. There was a peer review process to find the best possible missions, and they were executed beautifully all through the 70s and 80s to this day. That is going very well on a very good budget. But human space flight is a mixture of bureaucracy and what we call pork in the United States. Like, all the politicians want to make sure that their local area is receiving the huge amount of money that NASA is getting. So you have these space flight centers in various different states doing one little thing and one little thing here. It became incredibly efficient. And then there wasn't they didn't have any type of managerial sense to control the cost of these grand endeavors. And then they went down the wrong path with the space shuttle. They were a bit naive. They figured we could probably go to space back and forth in a shuttle several times a month, but it just evolved into some really complex, horrible thing because it didn't have shrewd business sense the way that Elon Musk has. This was the government and politicians running things, and it just wasn't a shrewd way to lower the cost of access to space. It would rest it on this largesse of taxpayer money. That's why it fell apart.
You're talking about money, and I quote you now: rocket launches are akin to flying a 747 jet, destroying it after one use, and build a new 747 for the next flight. So the cost to fly to space is immense, and it's a problem. So what should change, or is it already changing?
I don't think rockets are in our long-term future because they're incredibly inefficient, and it's a matter of physics. You don't have to just go up; you have to go up and over at Mach 25. At 8 kilometers a second, and that takes incredible amounts of fuel. And there's only so much more you can lower the cost. Elon Musk did this amazing job with just pure economics to lower it from about $20,000 a kilogram to $2,000 a kilogram. That might be the limit there. If you want to get even lower, there's a promising rocket fuel out there called metallic hydrogen that was isolated in a lab. Very hard to handle, but that could lower this down to maybe $200 a kilogram. But beyond the cost, it's the pollution and the noise. If you want thousands of people in space each and every day, you essentially have to build a highway into space. And that's where these grand ideas come in with the space elevator or these sky hooks dangling from orbit that you can attach cargo to. Take advantage of the fact that the Earth is already whirling around at a good speed. And if you can just connect to that orbital motion, you can kind of build the infrastructure to allow people to rise up into space with less energy and more quietly.
So today we see a change in the habits. Earlier, space flight was state-driven, and now we have the private companies. And there also comes a question I saw in the chat. Why did it take so long for the private sector to get involved in space programs? It was a question from Regular.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question, and it's more or less what you're asking too. And I don't want to say NASA is bad and ESA is bad. They provided this incredible foundation for SpaceX and Blue Origin and all these other companies to build upon. They're resting on the knowledge that NASA has built. So naturally it would take, a couple tens of years before this could get out and before businesses started to realize that they might be able to make money in this high investment environment. So it's the technology really that came along to push this.
Okay, so now we have the private companies that really push, but on the other hand, there cannot be only advantages. What are the disadvantages of private spaceflight?
Oh yeah, I can think of a couple. I mean, the danger. I think governments have to be more careful. That's the reason why NASA and perhaps other countries never went with the nuclear rocket idea, because if something goes wrong on the way up, you might be spreading, nuclear fallout all over South America. And, that's a major international crisis that the United States would want to avoid. But a rogue entrepreneur working out of Luxembourg or where the laws are a little looser, they might take such a chance. And even look at what Elon Musk is doing now, his philosophy of innovation is to blow things up, right? He has countless launches and they blow up, but they learn a little bit. NASA could never take that approach of constantly blowing things up. The optics are bad. But at the same time, there's that danger that someone's going to get hurt. It could be coming, I don't want to predict anything, but there's a high potential that someone's going to get hurt with what SpaceX is doing. And then when you think finally about landing on the moon or landing on the Mars, NASA takes incredible, and ESA takes incredible protections, and they don't want to contaminate Mars with Earth bacteria if they're going to search for life on Mars, and they don't want to bring anything back that could cross-contaminate the Earth. A company like SpaceX, again, wouldn't care so much. Musk just wants to send a bunch of people there, and if we dirty the soil and mess up our search for life, so be it. That's not his prerogative. So that's a disadvantage too.
You talk a lot about Elon Musk. He's one of the names. There is also Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson. Those three names, I would say, are the most famous. Elon Musk seems to be the most successful of the three, or is that deceptive?
Yeah, no, I guess he is, because he has proven success, unlike Bezos and Richard Branson. Unfortunately, they're still struggling, and so Elon Musk is making money. I don't think that rules out what the other ones are doing or what they can succeed to do. But you have to say at this point in 2021, Elon Musk is winning the game. Another impressive player for me is Robert Bigelow. I mentioned him. I think these are very compatible businesses that they have. I mean, Bigelow already put an expandable habitat on the ISS, flown on a SpaceX rocket. That's that business to business we're talking about. And Richard Branson wants to take people, in suborbital flights and things like that. That's complementary to the bigger picture here. So I think they all work hand in glove. But at this point, Elon Musk is really pushing the boundaries and having people catch up to him. It's exciting.
You were talking about that he is blowing up and trying again. Looking at the Starship test flights, what is your impression of these test flights?
I'm just, for lack of better words, cool. He has a long way to go. I'm trying to remember that perspective of NASA. Had a lot of failures through the 60s. And, you have to do step by step to get where you want to go. And it really looks like Elon Musk is in that direction. So I'm excited. I'm not cynical by his actions. I'm a little worried that people put too much trust in him, like he's the savior of the human race. He's going to get us to Mars. But at the same time, I'm very excited that he exists and that he is setting this example for others to follow, of pushing the boundaries of what human engineering can do. Very exciting, I feel.
Yeah. You mentioned Robert Bigelow. There are other companies, they claim they want to have some space stations up there.
Yeah.
Recently, it was Orbital Assembly Corporation that said they want to put up Voyager space station, which would offer 400 paying guests a nice vacation there, and they want to orbit it in 2027. How realistic are such projects?
Yeah, absolutely not realistic whatsoever. Pure showmanship. I think they're just trying to raise some money. I mean, they know they can't do this. They have like a team of 10 people, maybe. It's utterly ludicrous. I think they just want to make a big news story, and that's what they did. A bit like that Dutch project, Mars One, that was going nowhere from day one. And this is a grand idea, absolutely feasible. But I mentioned in the beginning, that's like a couple generations away. First, we're going to have the Bigelow inflatable habitats, learn how to get up there efficiently and dock to it. Ordinary people being able to do it, then connect them a little bit, and then create this artificial gravity, see how that works. You can't just go right to the final product. How's he, all these questions, how are they going to launch all that mass into space? Who's going to assemble it? The robots, robots are the saviors, they can do anything, we say, but can they really put all these things together in space? So I think it's very far-fetched, a grand idea, but 30 years away.
In the 1970s, Pan Am's first moon flights club existed. Anyone could register to fly to the moon. It didn't happen. Pan Am doesn't exist anymore. But also current missions like Artemis will not be realized as fast as hoped. When will we see the next manned moon landing?
Oh, the actual moon landing. I think around 2030, again, set by what China wants to do. That the United States currently have plans, present tense, to land by 2024. And that was set by the previous administration. Everyone I know at NASA knew that was impossible. They just went along with the idea because it was totally a political statement. But my concern is it's not very practical to get back to the moon as quickly as possible. Humans that have boots on the moon, as we say. It's not practical for the long-term sustainability of moon activities, just a waste of money. That's what the 60s were about, a race to get there. So what we need to do now, and I love ESA's approach, this idea of sending inflatable habitats. You land with an airlock and a habitat pops out. That's relatively straightforward. Then you have to work on these robotic things that can cover it up with regolith. Get that taken care of this decade and create some infrastructure, land some machines that can produce oxygen from the soil and create that infrastructure first so that humans can then move in at that point and start doing something. Sending back humans now or 2024, what would that prove? They wouldn't be able to do anything. They'll just dance around again, collect some rocks and come back. And you just wasted $10 billion that could have been applied to something else. And that'd be a shame. So I think by 2030, that's what China is eyeing. NASA really initially wanted 2028. So you add a couple of years because they'll slip.
In your book, you also bring up the comparison of a colony on Mars versus a colony on the moon. Which colony would you rather live in?
Oh, I see. To actually live, if I would rather live on Mars than the moon, because the moon has its own sense of beauty, I guess, but it's kind of a gray world. And because of the complete lack of air pressure, you can never really experience it. You'll always be in some bubble. And you might as well experience it through virtual reality if you can't smell it or touch it or anything like that. What's the use of actually being there? But Mars, again, we said it looked like Arizona. But I think what's exciting about Mars, more so than the moon for me, is there's always the potential to find life. When you're there, you could actually start digging around and maybe find past or present life. And that's, you're not going to do that on the moon. As exciting as other things on the moon could be, that Mars has that tantalizing feature to it.
In your book, you also write, we can't build a lunar base or fly to Mars just because it's neat. What would it take for humanity to go further into space?
Well, yeah, you would have to, what I was saying about living on Mount Everest, you have to establish the practicality of it all. And I think the moon can be very practical from a scientific base point of view, just like Antarctica is practical. What's the value of Antarctica to the countries that are there? you can't define it, but that sense of knowledge, I think, is priceless. The astronomy, the physics that they do down there, the geography, the weather, incredible knowledge that we gain from there. And it's sustainable. The United States is able to support that through its National Science Foundation for $500 million a year. So that's something we can do over and over again. I think the moon could be like that in a sustainable way, because it's now, for the United States, we spend $4 billion on the ISS. I think the moon should be the new ISS. Not that anyone's listening to me, but the ISS, let's hand it over to commercial interests now that we've established all this amazing foundation for them to work with. Let's move the operations to the moon for $4 billion a year, which is in the right price range, and start figuring out what it's like to live in low gravity as opposed to zero gravity. And all the astronomy and physics and biology and geography that can be done on the moon can be really sustainable for the benefit of humans. So it's finding a purpose on the moon for this to be sustainable and happen forever.
Elon Musk wants to fly to Mars, and not just fly there, but build a colony. Why should humans migrate from Earth to Mars?
Yeah, I can't think of a reason really right now. Again, the Mount Everest idea, everyone's going to want to climb to the top of Mount Everest, but then you're there and you don't want to stay there for too long. And I think Mars would be like that, to stay there generation after generation. I don't know what the motivation would be unless you can really live there comfortably. And I think it'll be claustrophobic. If you're going to be living underground all the time, because of the radiation, and you go outside and you have a big bulky suit because of the air pressure, I don't think people are fascinated about trying it, but I don't think when they really get ready to go, they're going to have second thoughts, because that's a pretty grim existence for the rest of your life and your children. Right now, I can't think of anything that would make us want to stay there unless it becomes some Garden of Eden that we turn into.
I have many more questions, but I would like to come to my last question. Afterwards, we have a lot of questions coming up in the chat. My last question to you: you write about many choices which will come up in the future in your book. On what mission would you like to be there in person, if you could choose? Well,
I'm a big baby. I don't know if I would really be out there on a first mission. I think I would, so the timeline doesn't work out, of course, because I'm 50 some years old. But if we had the ability to get to Titan right now, that's a moon of Saturn. That's kind of fascinating, and I would like to see what that's like. I don't think it's possible to colonize it, but it has an atmosphere, right? And it's thicker than the Earth's atmosphere, and the gravity is really low, like the moon or so, about 15%. So the combination of those two, thick atmosphere, light gravity, means you could fly. You could, with artificial wings, you could fly around, and that would be pretty neat to try. And of course, they have that liquid cycle that you could at least witness. I mean, it's hydrocarbons at 80 Celsius below zero, or more than that, I think, 180 degrees below zero. But there's clouds and rain and lakes and rivers, and that would just be fascinating, otherworldly. So I would like to be on that kind of mission and experience what that's like.
That sounds interesting. So please, Oliver, maybe you can give us some questions from the chat.
Absolutely. We have a question from Veronica Tomasini, which is that, do you think that the colonies in space will rule on the same political and economical system as currently on Earth, like democracy and capitalism, or create some new system we cannot think of yet?
I think I think ultimately there'll be some new system. I don't know if that new system will work. I'm trying to think of, I think it was the mutiny of the Bounty, right? That the mutineers that eventually settled on a little island, Pickerton. I don't know the right name, but they tried to set up their own little government, and it's really just evolved into some horrible system of child abuse. And I would like to think altruistically that humans would land on a new world and try to set up a form of government that best suits them. But history shows us that it always devolves, it seems, into something horrible, like the religious colonies of the United States, and how closed-minded they were. So I don't know, I'm just kind of rambling here, but I feel that it's going to be, if smart people go there, they're going to probably take the best elements of our democracies with them and then, massage it as they go along. But I think you're going to have that foundation of democracy. As we say here, capitalism is the worst of all. I don't know how it goes. It's the worst of all governments, but the best one we have, or something like that. I mean, it's not the perfect way, but this democratic, capitalistic society at least is enabling us to get into space. So maybe that's something we can build upon. Not much of an answer, I saw. What do you guys think?
Good question. I don't know the answer, but we have more questions. Oliver, please.
Good. We have a question from Urs Baumgartner. Thanks for those great inputs, Christopher. Do you think that all those new space technologies can help us save our planet and our climate? If yes, how? What could be the Teflon of 2030?
Oh, nice, the Teflon. Yeah. Well, absolutely. I was mentioning that I think that's the whole purpose of our venturing into space, is to tap into those unlimited resources in space. And by going into space more and more often, it becomes cheaper and cheaper. And I like to envision, see, my problem, my view of the Earth is there's not that there's too many people, that there's too much inefficiencies. When you consider that we waste half our food, and we squander all our electricity in these leaky electrical grids. And when you consider these people who want to get back to nature, they're relying on space-based technologies of satellite communication and to understand the weather and things like that. So I think I envision a future where we're in space so often that we can get our energy from space. And if we get very efficient about mining the moon, we could do the worst kinds of mining out there, the uranium mining or cobalt and things like that. And we would save the Earth from these horrible practices of mining. The profits would still be realized because you're just grabbing them from a different place. And I think that would allow more people to live the way they want to, in a futuristic way or even in a primitive way, because I think we will be saving the rainforest in places where the people who like to live closer to nature, their way of life is being threatened by our way of life. But if we're able to instead of pull their resources from underneath them, if we could get it from space, I think the world will be that much better off. And there's two kinds of futures that you can think of, and one is of limited resources on Earth. So that means anyone born, in some country that doesn't have much yet, like China or India or Africa, all the continents, all the countries of Africa, they want to drive cars. They want to do the things we do. And that takes resources, and they become our enemies because there's limited amount of resources. And I don't want to see that kind of world. I would like to see a world of unlimited space resources so that everyone can tap into it and have a more fuller, richer life.
Oliver, please, more
Fabulous, good.
questions. Have more, I think.
There is more coming and coming. Good. Regular has a question, which is, in literature and movies, we have already traveled the stars and colonized the entire solar system. Do you think that such fiction / visions or dreams are essential in driving science and promoting an interest in space exploration?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's what's pushing Elon Musk. However, unpractical some of his ideas are, it's the impracticalness of it that's pushing him out there, and the excitement. I never wanted to downplay that in my book, because I think these futuristic ideas are great drivers as long as people understand the reality of them. But on my book, I try to explain how you possibly could live on each and every planet. Whether that would happen gets back to that terrestrial chauvinism again. Maybe we'll just live above them. But there are ways to live on every planet, and that'll get people dreaming. There are ways of visiting other star systems. It was the physicist Freeman Tyson that proposed traveling to another star system in an asteroid, because it's already moving at incredible speed. If you can bore into the center of an asteroid, create your artificial rotating world inside there, and if you had like fusion energy from hydrogen, which is the asteroid has that in the form of water, you could, as you're going around the sun, give a little kick and propel that asteroid to another star system at 10% light speed. And that would be your protection against cosmic rays in your whole journey over to Alpha Centauri or something like that. That's a real fascinating concept that can get lots of people dreaming about space. It doesn't violate any physics, and it's just really cool. And it might excite people from thinking about what we can do in space.
Very interesting. And there is one more, a critical question, asking, like, making money is good for those who benefit, but nobody takes the bill for the environmental damages that are affecting every single nation and country who have no say in this disruptive technology.
That's the question. What I'm wondering what the act of flying into space, the pollutingness of that. I'm thinking of space as a way, especially if you have a system of space elevators or an orbital ring around the Earth where you have access to space much easier. I think, we would be able to be pulling in resources from space in a less polluting way. I think that's the main problem, that the wealthier countries are definitely doing the disproportional share of the polluting of this Earth. And if we want to go forward, I think space is the way to get away from that. I don't know if that's the essence of the question.
Yeah, I guess it pretty much fits. And there is the second last one. It's a question like, are there any long-term projects planned to find a second Earth somewhere outside of our solar system?
Oh, absolutely. These searches are constantly on with some of these Earth-finding missions. The James Webb Space Telescope, fingers crossed, if that thing finally launches at the end of this year, that has instruments that are going to look billions of years into the galaxy, into the universe. But it also has these infrared detectors that are so sensitive that it would probably be able to find Earth-like planets based on the prevalence of water and oxygen and things where we could actually live. So these things are constantly being identified. There's a few out there right now. I think the TRAPPIST system is one. People are constantly eyeing these things as future places where we might want to explore. The one drawback is we don't even know what Mars is about, and it's right next door. So we can speculate about what these planets are several light years away. And we can have a good guess, but you want to be pretty confident you can live there when you spend the few hundred years it'll take to get there. Yeah, but we're constantly on the lookout for these kind of planets.
Okay, good. Thanks a lot. How strong is the support for NASA from the new US president? The question from Martin.
Oh, very, very strong. Every US president really supported NASA in their own special way. Both sides of our political system, Democrats and Republicans. It's never been a partisan affair. There's always been robust investment. Primarily, it's because it's a job creator, for better or worse. Plus, I think presidents like to see themselves as being future oriented, and they want to get involved with space projects. So I had a train of thought, but I'm afraid I lost it. We're not going, the problem with this whole system, as I alluded to, is that there's a change of direction with every new administration. And it's hard to get bold long-term jobs done with NASA. It doesn't work that way with other parts of the government, like health, in the National Institutes of Health. It's not like one president comes in and says, we're going to do diabetes for the next 4 years. No, and then the next president comes in, oh, we're going to do heart disease, forget about diabetes. You know, that change doesn't happen, unlike NASA. So that's the political interference that's the problem. It's not the lack of enthusiasm for space from a president, but the added direction that the president might give to go in a certain direction. It was Obama who wanted to go to moon, and then Trump back to Mars. It was this back and forth. Bush before him was a Mars advocate. So then NASA just scrambles and they try to reinvent their current mission aimed to Mars. Okay, let's apply that to the moon somehow, even though it's not a perfect fit. And it's just a lot of waste of money and ideas instead of a focused that a better political system could help with.
Well, like a missing long-term guidance,
yeah, like
timelines. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, like the China idea.
Yeah, exactly. The last one from Veronica Tomasini. Should we colonize as human space or create some sort of robots to travel as avatars? Or let travel robots with AI, which work with humans stationed on Earth? And thanks for the presentation from Veronica.
Yeah, it was as little as just a few months ago that I thought that was a stupid idea, but now I'm totally on board with it. I mean, you have some speed of light issues, right? Because you have to send back information. So I don't know how to overcome that. But what really made me think about it was when I was thinking more about the moon and never being able to experience the moon, or maybe Mars if you can't terraform it. You'll never be able to smell it and touch it and hear it, really. And that means that the virtual reality experience is just as good. And I think that's a very practical way to explore these places, to send some type of robot to be your avatar. That technology is coming along remarkably. And that might be, it's not in the book. I didn't think about it as I was writing this, but that might be a major way that we start exploring these areas that our bodies just can't get to.
Great. Thanks a lot for the answers for the chat questions.
So time is up. Thank you very, very much, Christopher. It was so inspiring and so interesting. And I really recommend everyone to read this book, really. And you can even get a free copy. We have a raffle. Go to our website. But it was really amazing to hear what you said, and it's such a great book. Thank you so much, Christopher, for being with us.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm just excited about your plans for this museum. You have an incredible collection yourself, Guido. That was just a brilliant, and I hope you can get this thing moving. I'll visit it. Absolutely.
Whenever you come to Switzerland, even if the museum doesn't exist, you are very, very welcome, Christopher.
Thank you.
So thank you all in the audience. I have some announcements, so you don't miss out anything we do in the future. I want to share the screen again. As I said, you can win one of these 3 books, and if you don't win, go and buy one. It's really worth to read it. I went through like in a week, and I didn't have the time to read, so it really was fast. In the near future, we will have Space Time with Oliver Bichsel and me. It will be on these 3 days. Just go to our website and register for the newsletter, then you will see when this happens, and there will be also Zoom links. This Space Time won't be in English, this will be in German.
Keine Probleme.
Then Yuri's Night Switzerland will come up on Wednesday, 14th of April. Go to the website Yuri's Night Switzerland and register. It's free, but you have to register to be a part of it. There will be Claude Nicollier and many other great speakers there, and we might have to have others. We are negotiating at the moment. Then again, Fantasy Basel, it will happen from the 8th to the 10th of October. We will be there, of course, as Swiss Space Museum, so come and visit us. Then, of course, you have the possibility to support us as a member. You can have a membership, or, of course, we also are happy if you make a donation, because all we do for free, but it's not everything is for free. So thank you very much for being with us, and we hope we will see you soon again. Have a good night or good day. Christopher has still afternoon there, so have a good time. Thank you for being with us. Goodbye.
Good Dank. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Christopher. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Guido. Are you going to have a quick drink, chat?
Oh, yes. Let's have one. Cheers.
The aftermath. This Elon Musk guy, I think it's a very negative impact on the whole space exploration personally, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
He doesn't give a fuck about science. It's just about making money. He will do whatever it takes to add extra dollars to his bank account and ruin our skies.
Yeah, you might be right. Cheers. I don't have a drink, but a wine, but cheers. Cheers. Okay, now I will end this, and thank you very much, and see you next time.